I'm really struggling with my testimony at this point. Like,
This is around what month? This is around what month?
This was December.
Late last year.
Yeah.
December, so
November, December, January.
Yeah. 8 or 9 months ago.
Yeah. So when they finally released me from being the Stake Yeoman's president, the day I got released, my bishop comes to me with his little binder and says, and by the way, our bishop is an incredibly kind, loving, honest man. And we've been friends with their family. Our kids grew up together. We've been friends with them. And like true friends, like, right? Not just church friends, but true friends with them since we moved in. So, but he's coming to me in the capacity of bishop and he says, I have a calling for you. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, hold on. Like, don't I even get a day to breathe? Like, you already have a new calling for me? I just got released and and he told me what the calling was. And I said, Bishop, we need to talk. And so we paced the halls together while our spouses waited in the foyer. But we just paced the halls in the stake center. And I told him, without really telling him, I am really struggling right now. Like, really, really struggling. And this is incredibly painful, but I think I'm going to have to say no. And I'd never said no to a calling, but I'm saying no to a calling. And I said, through many, many tears, I don't know that I can stand in front of these people that you want me to teach and testify that this is true, because I don't know. And that was really hard for me to say, but, and to acknowledge that I no longer know what I thought I knew my whole life, the basis of everything I've done, the person that I am, the direction of my life, everything has been based on the truthfulness, the truth claims of my church. And I'm at a place where I don't feel comfortable telling someone else that it's true if it might not be true. So I said no. And he said, well, I'll give you time to think about it. And I said, Bishop, I can't accept this calling. I appreciate your faith in me, but I can't. Right now, I'm just not in a place where I can do that. Anyway, so fast forward 2 weeks, I go to sacrament meeting. The bishop comes up to me as the meeting is starting, like it's going to start in 1 minute. And he says, Donna, we're going to sustain you today. And I'm like, oh, wait. Like I said, no. And now he's saying, we're going to sustain you today. You're okay with that? And I'm like, and by this, so my husband is sitting beside me and the bishop's wife has walked over and she's standing next to him at this point. And I had to say to him in sacrament meeting out loud, in front of his wife, in front of my husband, Bishop, I can't take this calling. And I started to cry and just so much shame. And I felt very weak and I'm a disappointment. I'm disappointed. I've said no. And the bishop's wife, he said, okay. And he went up to the stand and his wife stayed behind and she was sitting on the bench in front of me and she turned around and she could see me, like I'm shaking and my palms are sweaty and I'm starting to like work up into a really good cry. And she says, Donna, no, don't go there. Don't you feel ashamed at having to say no? If that's how you feel, that's okay. And then she started talking about something else. And that, like, I stopped crying. And I still felt really, really bad. But at the same time, I feel like I was raised to have integrity. And my integrity does not allow me to stand in front of a group of people and perpetuate this. I can't do that. So by that time I was because as the Stake Young Women's president, I wasn't in my ward very often anyway. I was doing ward conferences and meeting with other people. And so people were used to not seeing me. So when they did see me at church, they'd say, "You're in our ward today. We're so happy," and I'm like, "Yay, I'm here." And it was sometimes a major accomplishment to get myself there. And for the first time in my life, there were times when I left after sacrament meeting and went home because I could not handle one more hour. And when they changed it to 2-hour church, I thought, I'm going to start going in January, and my commitment to myself is I'm going to go to I can handle 2 hours a week. I'm going to go to church every single week, and I'm not going to skip any meetings. And that lasted for about 3 weeks before I started missing it. But anyway, so I'm going through this major faith crisis, major, and it's shattering all my views and beliefs and what I thought I knew. And at the same time, I was transitioning because Stephanie, who started Encircle, came to me at some point, and I'd been volunteering since the very beginning, and I was a devoted volunteer, and I showed up because I wanted to show Michael that I love him, and I wanted to continue to show him that I love him. But I started to know the other kids there, and I saw in them what I saw in Michael, and every stereotype that I had been taught was absolutely shattered. They're human beings just like me. I didn't know. Like, I thought they had horns. You know what I mean? Like, I had othered them so much that to be faced with real life people who are just living their life like I am was a revelation to me. And I absolutely fell in love with the youth at Encircle. And the craziest thing is that I'm a landscape designer. And so that's how I volunteered at Encircle. I'm like, I'll take care of the yard. And so I'd be mowing the yard, and one of the youth would come, and they would see me from the parking lot, and they would yell my name, "Donna!" And I would stop the mower, and I would go over to them, even though I'm like sweaty and gross, and we would talk for a minute. And then they would hug me really big and tight, and then they'd go in, and then I'd start mowing again. It's a small lawn, and it took me like 2 hours to mow the lawn because people kept stopping me. Or I would see someone, and I'm like, "Oh, I recognize you," and I'm like, I need to be more out there and recognize. Like, when I see someone, there was a girl that I went to school with, and when anyone would walk in the room, didn't matter who it was, she would say their name in such a way that it sounded like a party was about to start, and now they were here so it could, So when she saw me, she's like, "Donna!" And it made me feel so good. And I wanted to recognize people and make them feel that they are as valuable as they actually are, but they may not recognize. So when I would see them, I'm going to make up a name, Andy, and I would run to them and hug them, and we would talk for a second. I fell in love with these kids, and they knew me as Michael's mom, and that gave me credibility, I guess. You're Michael's mom, so you must be okay. And the fact that you're here, that's awesome. And I started really looking forward to my time there. The way my mind works is Christmas to Christmas, right? Like, that's how my year progresses, Christmas to Christmas, and Sunday to Sunday. When can we go to church next? How many days until Sunday? And I would count down and be excited. That it shifted to Wednesdays, because that's when I went to Encircle. Wednesday is my day, and my whole world revolves around Wednesday. How many more days until I can go back to Encircle? And just really loved being there, loved the feeling there, loved the kids. The fact that other adults showed up and without being paid, like, they're there because they want to be there. They're volunteering their time. It means that there are other people who recognize the goodness of these people in the same way that I recognize the goodness. And for me, there was never a thought that I'm going to come in here and like save all these people, or even be an ally. Like, I didn't want any sort of label. All I want to do is show up and be in the same space as you. Like, the fact that these youth allowed me to share their space, and not just share their space, but they made me feel like I was loved and I'm accepted. And and valuable and needed and wanted. It felt so good. So my husband and I, when the new city center temple was built, and we volunteered in the temple. So we were in the baptistry every Saturday morning from 5:30 to 10. It's really hard to get up on a Saturday morning at 5:30. Well, actually, we had to get up earlier because I had to get ready. But anyway, but this is all during this transition time, and I'm starting to realize that youth suicide that's coming to the forefront. Like Michael said, one of his friends took his own life, and that was I can't even speak about that. It's too hard. And there were other youth suicides, and there were people that were truly, truly hurting. And it dawned on me one day, my time is so limited. We had to find a time where Steve and I could both be in the temple at the same time. That was hard enough. But then I'm either volunteering or working all week long. Saturday is my day to do everything: laundry, our yard, grocery shopping, everything. And we were going to cut half a chunk of that day away so that we could be in the temple. And I was so happy to do that and loved being there. But I was driving out from under the temple one day, got up to the Encircle house in Provo is right across the street from the temple. So when you drive out of the parking garage, the Encircle house is right there. And I looked up and I saw the house, and I'm like, there are people, I'm serving in the temple, basically people who are dead. And the youth who come, it's great. I'm there, I'm helping them, strengthening their testimonies, and they're serving, and it's a wonderful thing. But there are kids across the street who are killing themselves. Okay, no one at Encircle has ever taken their life. But there are youth who are hurting, and they're hurting right now. They didn't live 200 years ago. They're hurting now. And I'm like, why am I in the temple serving people who are dead when there are people who are hurting right across the street right now? And I'm like, I'm not going to serve in the temple anymore. And that was a hard decision to make, because I'm like, this is another sign of my devotion and my loyalty and my faith and my beliefs. But I'm like, I'm going to serve at Encircle instead. So I increased my volunteer time at Encircle. And anything that there was a volunteer needed, I was there. It doesn't matter what it is, where it is, when it is, I will be there. Anyway, so I got to know Stephanie, and just so admire her on many levels, and got to know Jacob, the chief operating officer. And
this is Stephanie Sorensen Larson
yeah.
and Jacob Dunford, for the listeners.
Yeah. Jacob.
Shout out to them. We love them.
I wish that everyone could know Jacob. There's something so special about him. He is truly, truly he's one in a billion. So when I was volunteering at Encircle and Jacob would walk in the door, he was like a celebrity to me. And I'm like, I'm in the same room with Jacob. And I felt that way with Stephanie too. These are great, grand people, and I'm so grateful I get to share space with them. And so Jacob comes in, and I'm like, ooh, Jacob, and if Jacob, I didn't want to be presumptuous and go and hug him, but if he came and hugged me and recognized, hey, Donna, how are you? I felt so special, super special. And so anytime I could be around Jacob and Stephanie, I'm like, I'm there. Anyway, so at some point, Stephanie's like, I wish you could work for Encircle. And I was like, me too, but not in a actual, that couldn't work. But it would be great, if they were, I could clone myself so that I could be at my BYU job and here, But I'm working at BYU, and it's the best job I've ever had in my life, hands down. Every single day was getting up to go play with my friends. I had friends, and I adored my students. So, Oh, so much. I loved them. I loved the people I worked with, and I got to work outside and be outside and use my skills and design things and make things beautiful. And it was instant gratification because like when the lawn is mowed, you can stand back and say, I did that, and look how good it looks, and I prided myself in my little area of campus looking perfect. Like I truly, as far as landscaping goes, I feel like my area in campus was as perfect as a landscape can be. Like weeds were offensive, like even teeny little ones. Like they never got big. We got them when they were teeny. Anyway, I loved my job. But last July at Love Loud, Stephanie said, Donna, if everything goes well, like we would really like to bring you on to do like family outreach or something. We're not sure. It's, we don't know what we want you to do, but we want you. And I'm like, you want me? Like, oh my gosh. But at the same time, like just the fact that you want me means so much to me. I'm never leaving BYU, but just the fact that you want me, holy cow. Anyway, so she comes back to me in October, November, and she's like, listen, we have a board meeting. I'm 80% sure that they will let us hire you. And I'm like, oh, like as much as I would love that, I don't know how to leave BYU. Like, but it came to a point where I'm like, I have to actually think about this. Like this might be a possibility where I actually have to make a choice. And then she came back to me at the beginning of December and said, and the beginning of December at BYU, a student took their own life in the building next to me. And
the Tanner building, right?
Yeah. My students and I, we heard the sirens. We didn't know what happened, but we knew something was going on. And the feeling when we found out what happened, I held it, the possibility that it was an accident. I held on to that for as long as I possibly could. And then when I realized it wasn't, it was so devastating, especially because I was close to people, dear friends at BYU, who were really struggling to want to be alive. And for them to hear about this, it shook them. It really shook them. And I was really worried about them. And anyway, but Stephanie came to me again and said, we want to offer you this job. And I thought, I love my students so much, and leaving them really broke my heart. They know I love them. But I felt like for the youth I know who have passed away, and for that person in the Tanner building who felt so hopeless and so much pain, I couldn't. It's too much to bear. And I thought, it's just me, little me, but if there's something I can do to help someone feel that there's hope, that there's a future where they're going to be happy and thrive, I have to do that. And I really weighed that because I love my students so much. The thing I think that was a tipping point for me that made me say yes to this position at Encircle was, these are BYU students and they're already the cream of the crop, right? They are the most phenomenal human beings. They're smart. They're wise. They're filled with faith and devotion, and they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. And they're adults, they're going to be okay. Like I won't be the determining factor in how successful they are, right? But if there's a chance that I might be the determining factor in some small way, of these kids staying alive, that's what I feel like I need to do. So I gave my 2 weeks notice, and it was horrific. And beginning of January started full time with Encircle. And that transition was really, really hard because I was really missing my students. I was missing that community. I was missing like being outside and doing, like, that was my passion. And it was hard to leave that. But to sit around the table with Jacob and Stephanie and some other, like, some of the world's very, very, very best people. Like, they are my humans. To be able to sit with them and to make decisions and to go out and do Encircle, it was really good. I'm so, so happy. And I'm happier every single day.
And someday, when they're ready, I'd love to have Stephanie and even Jacob come on Mormon Stories and tell their story. But I understand that they walk a fine line.
They do.
In the community. Their motto is no sides, only love.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine that they would, want to always make sure that anything they do does nothing to harm or compromise the reputation of Encircle.
Yes.
So we'll send out their love and that open invitation, and we're glad you can come.
Yeah.
Now, there's this quote that I shared with a friend the other day that I've repeated on Mormon Stories a few times here and there. It's from Upton Sinclair when he's talking about the executives of the meatpacking plants and industry back in the early 1900s. And I think about tobacco executives as well, which it's this quote that says it's impossible to get a man to see a point of view when his livelihood depends on not seeing it.
Oh, yes.
And I think about the fact that you were a church employee, right?
Yeah.
And you left the church's employ in January and went to work for Encircle. And that's kind of when I first heard from you. Was there any, was leaving BYU something that allowed you to really fully contemplate leaving the church? Had you already decided to leave the church? How did that work?
At that point,
timing?
While I was still at BYU, I was having serious doubts that I absolutely kept to myself. Like, I would never, ever speak of them to anyone.
Right.
Because I would never want anyone's faith to be shaken the way mine was. Like, live your life, be happy. So I did not leave BYU because of my faith crisis. They happened kind of around the same time, but I didn't leave because of that. So when I left BYU, I was at a friend's house who had a picture of two women on her wall, and I said, "Who are those women?" And she said, "These are wives of Joseph Smith." And I was like, "What?" Like, I know Emma and this other lady, but that neither one of those. So she's like, "Oh, Donna," she's like, "He had like 32 wives or something, and some of them were even married to other men at the time." And I was like, "What?" And she pulled a book out of her bookshelf and said it was In Sacred Loneliness, which I still haven't read, but I will. But it was the journals of all the wives of Joseph Smith, and I was like, I had no idea, and so I'm falling down the rabbit hole even further, and she gave me another book, and then she told me her story and how they lost her family lost their faith and what that was like for them, and so she gave me the CES letter, and I wasn't ready for it, but I don't know if anybody can be ready for that. Like, to go from ultra orthodox to a few doubts and questions to the CES letter, it was horrific. So I took it home and read it. And before I'd even finished the first chapter, and when I say I read it, I had the paperback, right? And then I found at the back, because I'm like, he's got these little numbers, but where are the footnotes? Like, where can I find that? And then I found in the back, oh, it's all online. So as soon as I would see a reference point, I would go online and look up that reference point and read that whole art, even if it was super hard. There were some in the translation chapter that were hard to read because I didn't understand what they were talking about. Like there's these words I haven't heard of before and I don't know what they mean. And I would read it like 3 times. Anyway, and then if there were references in that article, I would follow those and read every single one of them. And then every single one of so it was like a tree, like there's a CES letter and it led me to this document, which led me to this document, which led me to this document, which, and I was reading every single one of them. It took me a long time, because I was going to be thorough. And I also really, truly, truly did not want it to be true. I wanted the church to be true. And finding out these little things, I thought somebody's got this wrong. And I just need to keep reading until I find where they got it wrong, and I'm an intellectual person. I'm smart. I will figure this out. And then went on to the next bullet point and read all those references and all of that. And the interesting thing was that, he has little dots beside the articles that he sends you to. And some of them are red, some of them are black, and some of them are green. And the green ones were church, put out by the church. This is church material. The black ones were neutral, and the red ones were could be considered maybe anti-Mormon. Most of the dots were green. So these are most of the stuff is coming from church sources. But I'm dude, I've lived my whole life and I've never heard this. How come I didn't know about this? How come I didn't, how come I never heard this? How come I never read this article? How come, and it was just really in-depth stuff. But I was reading every single article, every single reference, and found out that Joseph Smith copied from the King James Version of the Bible, but I could excuse that. I'm there's got to be a reason for that. But then to find out that the same mistakes, anyway, that you know how it goes. So I'm reading and I'm oh my gosh, it dawns on me at some point, oh dear, the Book of Mormon might not be what he said it was. And then there's the chapter about the Book of Mormon and the historicity of it. And when Lehi died, I cried because I felt that loss because he was part of my life, When Nephi died, and I knew it every single time. I knew where that story was, and I knew it was coming, and I knew he was going to die, and I cried because he was a prophet and he was real. So when the Book of Mormon is no longer what I thought it was, it also means that the people in it aren't real. And it felt like they had all died. It was such a loss for me to realize that Ammon wasn't a real person. It was shocking and it hurt, and I felt loss at the people in the Book of Mormon. And then piled on that, the loss of the Book of Mormon. But I'm you know what? It's still a really good book. It's beautiful. It's inspired. There's so many good stories, even if it's not actually true. It still leads me to Christ. I truly feel that. So, but I'm grappling with this, but hold on, it's not true. But it's still, it's not true, but it's still good. And still reading and finding out more, and got to the book of Abraham. And I did not believe what he wrote in that book. No. And then I went to the sources, the source documents, the primary sources, and I saw the facsimile that Joseph drew in where there were pieces missing, and where the multiple times in his diaries and in other things said that he was working on the translation of, and he was working on the Egyptian alphabet so that they could translate. This is translation, the way Webster's dictionary says translation, right? From one language to another. He's translating. That's my understanding of the word translation. One of the sources was the Gospel Topics essays on the Book of Abraham. I'd never heard of the Gospel Topics essays, didn't know what they were, where they were, didn't know that they were like they were from the church, on the church's website. So I hit the link, I go to the Gospel Topics essay about the Book of Abraham. And the very first sentence is, we hold that this is scripture inspired, it's part of our canon and we stand by it. But then the rest of the article has to admit that it's not a translation. No part of it is a translation. No part of it matches the actual papyri.
The word Abraham doesn't even appear anywhere in the papyri, right?
Yeah, like my brain is exploding. And when I read the sentence in there that no part of it is an actual translation, I honestly felt like I don't know myself. I don't know what's real. I don't know what's true. I don't, like, wait. Like, translation, doesn't it mean this? But they're saying it could mean something else. But that means they're changing the meaning of the word translation. But that's not a Mormon word. That's like an actual, like, English term, translation. And so they're trying to, like, twist it around to fit, but it doesn't fit. But I honestly felt like I was going crazy. Like, I felt crazy. Like, I've missed something somewhere. And I've done lots and lots of research since then about the Book of Abraham. And it dawned on me just a week ago. And it's weird because it's not as bad and not as hard on me anymore. But every time I would find out something new, it would just send me down this like deep depression where I would cry for days, not sleep at night. I was a nervous wreck during the day. And it's not so hard now, but like I'm still finding out things like almost daily that was misrepresented or it was a flat out lie. And not only that, now when I say the church, I don't know who that includes. Is it the 12? Is it the 15? Is it the historians? I don't know. But the church knew the truth. And they either misrepresented it, omitted it, or flat out lied. That's a hard realization. That the true church lied. I've never lied. Okay, of course I've lied. But you know what I mean? When I sit in my Temple Recommend interview and they ask me if I'm honest in my dealings with my fellow men, and I could answer yes. But the church that's asking me if I'm being honest isn't honest. It's baffling to me, like mind-blowing, earth-shattering, like... Anyway, so I continue to read and I'm finding out more and more and more, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And at some point I'm laying in bed, crying myself to sleep again. And Steve wakes up and he's like, what is going on? And I'm like, it's the same stuff, and I'm reading something online that was supposed to be like, you can still stay in the church. Like, even if this isn't true and that's not right or whatever, you can still be a member and go to church every Sunday and be happy and live a good life. And I'm like, but I thought this website was going to tell me that the CES letter was wrong and that everything they've told me all my life was actually true. And he's going, even though this isn't right, and even though there's proof of this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted so desperately for the CES letter to be wrong. That I'm somehow confused, mixed up, crazy, whatever. But I just remember thinking, I don't know what's real. I don't know what's real anymore. I felt like I was like losing it, like having a mental breakdown, like actually going crazy. Like I might need help. I might need to like go get help somewhere. And I thought I just need to get outside. It's like 1 a.m. and it's pouring down rain. And I'm like, I just need to get outside. I just need to see the stars. Like all of a sudden it became imperative. Like this is a matter of life and death. I must see the stars because I know they're real. And I went outside and it's raining and I can't see the stars. And I was like, but then I saw the mountains and I'm like, okay, the mountains are real. I've been in them. I've touched them. The mountains are real. Therefore, I am real, because I was honestly beginning to think if I honestly couldn't tell what was reality and what wasn't. I'm real. I'm here. I'm breathing. I'm a human. Like I had to like my whole life was like fell apart, like deconstructed everything, not just my beliefs, but everything. And I just got to a place where it dawned on me, like I came to the realization one day, this church isn't true. The Book of Mormon is not true. And it hurts me to say that. It hurts me to know that. I realized that if the Book of Abraham isn't true, it's not a translation, I don't know what it is, then that means there's no kolob. That means like the 3 degrees of glory and celestial everything is like, is that a thing? That I can go to heaven and be with my family and make my own worlds and all that. Like, that's not true. Like, that's not a thing. Like, basically my whole belief system has shattered, like fallen apart. It's gone. It's gone. And I don't know how to breathe without this church. I don't know how to breathe without, I don't know how to function. I don't know how to not be Mormon. I don't know how. So I'm going through all this. This is all happening. This is like February, March. I'm coming to the realization that this church isn't true, and it's a hard realization. Meanwhile, I'm working at Encircle. I'm working on like suicide prevention and family outreach and things like that. Putting together programs for parents and support groups for parents and things like that. So I'm at this meeting on April 4th, and I had a full day. I had this meeting that I was going to, and then I had a little break, and then I had some presentations at some different high schools and stuff that I was going to be going to, and so busy day. And I had to be up in Salt Lake at 9 a.m. So I got up there, but I'd been talking to my sister Sarah. Oh, I didn't tell you this part. Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. Let me backtrack. 1 month, February. I'm reading the CES letter. My world is falling apart. I got to a point where I thought so when Michael came out, I prayed to die, right? I got to a point where like, I don't want to live and I'm willing to do the deed. And
you wanted to die.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm suicide prevention and I know the signs and I'm exhibiting the signs, and all of a sudden I had this new understanding of what people who have suicide ideation are actually feeling and going through because I'm living it. And I'm like, okay, like I'm trying to think rationally, like what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to reach out to somebody. Okay. So like I texted my sisters, the 5 of us live here. Actually, all 6 of us now, all of 6 of us kids, but there's 5 sisters and we've always been really close. We are all in a group text that's just about everything, anything going on in life, questions, whatever, it's our group text. So I reached out to them and it was hard for me to do. I felt really vulnerable and very weak and scared and didn't want to admit that I needed help, but I knew that I needed help, that I knew that I wasn't going to make it through the day if I didn't reach out. So I reached out to them and I said, you guys, I'm really struggling. I am having thoughts of suicide. I need help. My sister Sarah called me immediately and she said, Donna, what's going on? And by this time I'm crying and I said it, I found out some stuff about the church and it's super hard and I don't know what to do and I'm really struggling and I like tried to explain a little bit. She goes, what are you talking about? And I said, the CES letter, and I'm just like super shy. And she's like, what's a CES letter? I'm like, it's this letter that this guy sent to his institute teacher asking a bunch of questions about the church, like inconsistencies, things he didn't understand. And then his CES letter, his director didn't answer, or I don't know what. But so he went through and answered his own questions, and it's all these issues about the church that don't make sense, that like everything we thought was true might not be true. And she's like, what? And I was like, oh, Sarah. Anyway, we get off the phone. She looks up the CES letter. I still apologize to her for that, because I'm like, oh gosh. Because she was the super faithful one in our family. She was the one who went on a mission. She was the super obedient one. Good grades in high school, blah, blah, blah. Came home from a mission, married a returned missionary, like perfect Mormon life. She hit all the benchmarks. Super faithful. She's the primary president. Her husband is the young men's president. They've got 5 kids. She looks up the CES letter. She reads it all day long online. And then her husband gets home and she says, you have got to come read this. And he's like, what is it? Innocent. And she gives it to him and they both start reading it and they stay up all night long. Sarah cries herself to sleep around 3 a.m. She wakes up at 5 or 6 and Jay's not in the bed. And she looks over and he's between the wall and the bed and he's still reading. And he's crying and he's like, it's not true. It's not true. Like their whole world shattered in one night. Mine came slowly over time. But in one night, everything in their life was gone. Their support system, their family, everything gone. She said they walked out of the room the next morning and they were done. They called their bishop, made an appointment with him, said, release us from our callings. We're not coming back. And that was incredibly hard for them because they truly, truly love, Sarah has said it many, many, many times, how much they love their bishop and how much love they feel from their bishop. But it crushed him. But they're like, we can't, I'm not going to live a lie. But it Sarah calls me from time to time. She's crying. She's like, just tell me it's still true. Like, maybe we're wrong. Maybe it's true and we're just being deceived. And I'm like, and so like we talk each other down. But
well, some people are going to blame you and say you shouldn't have spoken out to your sister.
I know.
Other people are going to blame the CES letter and Jeremy Runnels. Other people are going to blame me. But then we could blame Richard Bushman or Rough Stone Rolling because that helped triggered you. Like, there's, and a lot of people read the Gospel Topics essays. Like, who do we blame? Is it you? Is it your fault? Should you have stayed quiet?
Some part of me wishes that I had, because it's been so devastating for them and their family, and I feel responsible. But she always tells me, no, Dawn, I'm so glad you told me.
But it could have been the person that shared CES letter with you, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
Where does the responsibility lie?
If I'm being truthful, I think we should place the responsibility where it actually lies, and that is with the church and the way they dispense information, or the way they withhold information, the way they twist information. I feel like they've painted themselves into a corner where you're not allowed to doubt, you're not allowed to look, and if you do, you're the weak one, you're the wrong one, you're the sinner, and we are infallible. God won't let us go astray. Therefore, everything we say is gospel truth. They've painted themselves into a corner, and I don't know the outcome of that. I know what it has been for me. And I'm not trying to pull anybody else out of this church. The last thing on the planet I would want to do is put someone through what I've gone through. This has been absolutely horrific. Steve, I don't know how much to share. There came a day, this was, I have to tell you about, okay, April 4th this year.
Conference time.
2 days before conference starts. I'm in my Suicide Prevention Coalition work group meeting, and somebody says, they reversed the policy. And I'm like, Okay. So I was alive and an adult when the towers fell, and I'm watching them fall, and my head isn't believing what my eyes are seeing. It was that same feeling, like you're saying the words, but I'm not processing this. And they said they reversed the policy. And I thought, well, maybe they reversed a part of it. They revised no, they reversed the whole thing. The frame of mind that I'm already in is, if they got this wrong, what else did they get wrong? And then there's a bazillion things that I have found out that were misrepresented or hidden or just flat out lied about. And I'm already in this frame of mind. It was like, I don't think the church is true. But there's still this part of me that's trying to hold on and trying to make it true. And so they say the policy's been reversed. And for a split second, I was so happy. I'm like, oh gosh, thank goodness. And then I'm like, wait, no, wait. What does this mean? What does this mean for the youth who've taken their lives because their church told them there's no place for them? What does this mean for my friend who married her wife and took her life? What does it mean for her wife, her family? What does this mean for the mom who took her own life? What does this mean? They're rescinding this. Wait, it's a revelation. It's not just a policy.
Someone would say, now, wait a minute. You hated this. It hurt people. They made it better. They fixed it. That should make you happy. That might even make you want to come back to church, right?
Hell no. 3.5 years later, God changes his mind about gay people. 3.5 years later, after many people have died and left the church and lost their families and been kicked out of their homes and lost their children. And no. I was happy for a split second, and then I realized, oh my gosh. Well, okay. Then while I'm sitting in the meeting, I was like, wait. No. This was revelation. And I remembered the talk. It was Elder Nelson at the time in Hawaii, January 2016, gave a speech or a talk or whatever, and he explicitly went through the steps of how this policy, was revelation, how it's the mind of God, it's the will of God, how we came together and we watched the Lord work upon the prophet, and it was our privilege and honor to sustain him. And it's revelation, and he told us the story of how it happened. And now they're saying it's a policy that they're reversing by revelation. No. I 100% reject that. 100%. It wasn't right to begin with. I tried so hard to make it fit, but it didn't fit because it shouldn't have fit because it was wrong. And then 3.5 years later, after so much suffering, you got another revelation that the policy needs to be rescinded? No. You can't call it revelation and then call it policy when you change it and call that revelation. And it's not just that. It's not like they said, we need a new hymn book. We're going to put out a new hymn book. 3.5 years later, we need a different hymn book. We're going to take that one back and give you no. People died. Lives changed forever, shattered. I've seen the carnage. I've seen it with my own eyes. How dare you call it revelation? How dare you call yourself a prophet? So sad for people online who are like, yay. I'm like, are you? You obviously don't understand the implications of this. I'm not going to enlighten you on the theological part of it. But I got out of the meeting and Sarah called me, and she was screaming and crying, screaming. I couldn't understand the words. She was forming words, but I couldn't understand her words for 5 whole minutes. And I finally stopped trying, and I'm just going to let her. like say what she needs to say. And she's screaming and screaming and crying. And then I start crying because I'm already like shaking, and it's dawning on me that this isn't revelation, and it wasn't revelation to begin with. And they called it revelation so that people would stop talking about it, so that people would say this is wrong. If it's revelation, it's not wrong because it's from God. So we're done talking about this now. By the time I got to, so there's an Encircle in Salt Lake, and I kind of go between. I'm driving up to Encircle for my next meeting, and the realization like settles on me. The pain that policy caused, the pain that it caused me, my son, my family, my extended family, who are Orthodox Mormon and are still trying to make it fit somehow. The people who died, this one life that we get, and theirs is gone.